These are the main ways that landlords get sued in real estate, especially when it comes to rental properties. So, the most common area is when a tenant moves out, and you, as the landlord or property management company, is going to come in and assess the damage. So, before you can even do that, you have to really know the condition upon when they moved in, which is really difficult if you change ownership or even management companies. They may not have kept great documentation. So, if you don't have a lot to go off of, or basically no photos or videos of when they moved in, I think the theme of the property, especially if it's multi-unit, you should have a good idea of the condition of what it could have been left in based on the other units, and of course your ownership. So if it's something that you recently bought, I would just go off general condition of the other units. If you bought something recently and don't have an idea of how it actually looked, but if you've owned it for some time over tenants, then you'll basically know, like, hey, it was freshly repainted after this, before this move in, and stuff like that. So depends a little bit there. But if we have a property that we take over where we're not totally sure of the condition, we're going to rely on our experience and other factors of the condition of the property to have a good estimate, or an idea, I should say, on how the unit probably looked when they moved in. The other thing is, if you're unsure, it's better to, be on the side of cautionary, or on the side of caution than it would be to overcharge the tenant's deposit. So after 10 years of doing this, we've been pretty successful. There's only been one time where a resident won a few $100s because it wasn't even related to the charges. It was related to, we just missed the timeline of the notice of sending the tenant the certified mail. So worst case, a 10-year period, hundreds of tenants. I'd say that's a pretty good track record. So we have that track record because we do not look at, and owners should not look at, the security deposit as a form of income. You're only supposed to charge, normal wear and tear or things outside of normal wear and tear. So the purpose of this video was sort of shed some light on the process of how we handle it. Tenant moves out, we'll have the inspector do a detailed report, analyze the property condition. If we have a move-in report and they were placed by us, we'll have an easy way to do side-by-side comparisons on potential damage. If not, then, like I said, we'll go through and assess what's normal wear and tear, or what could be considered something that the landlord should actually improve. If stuff is not tenant damage, or there's a little bit of a gray area, you don't want to charge the resident for stuff that's curb appeal related that you're doing as an owner to improve the property. Like, a simple example would be recaulking the bathroom tubs and showers and, base of the toilet and stuff like that. Yes, it may look worse if the tenant's been there for 5 years, but there's not something purposefully that they're doing from a negligence standpoint to make it look worse. So that's something where, hey, that's normal wear and tear, or that would just be something that we just need to do to make it look better if it's gotten a little bit gray or something like that, and we just want to freshen it up. So I'm going to walk you through a few things that we come up with commonly to kind of give you an idea, like, is it really wear and tear or not? So most of our rental properties don't have carpet. We don't recommend it. So if you're going to replace flooring, always do something other than carpet. But if it's in good condition, or we just had a homeowner that bought a property and they moved out, deep cleans obviously going to be a great thing that you're going to want to do on the carpets, whether the tenant said it was done or not. Same for deep cleaning in general. A new tenant moving in could have a different perspective on what clean is versus the old tenant. So there, even if a tenant moves out and provides a professional receipt of a deep cleaning, you really want to take a second look at if it needs something additional that's going to meet your sort of standards, and a legitimate company that was did a cleaning. So it's not a bad idea in your leases to even have just, hey, we're going to deep clean this when you move out anyways. So don't basically spend the money because you're going to hire the deep cleaner. We're going to do it anyways. It's an easy way to maintain control and make sure the quality is there, versus tenants saying, hey, we hired our own cleaners, or we deep we deep cleaned it ourselves. So, but back to carpets. Want to use some sort of way, use a carpet cleaning company that can identify if there's been pet urine and stuff on that. Use a black light. That's an easy way to understand if there's been more damage to the carpets than meets the eye. But general wear and tear, right? So carpets are going to get used. So unless there's something major like a burn hole or the pets ripped it up, you have to take into account how long they've been in the property, as well as to, okay, yeah, I was going to upgrade the floors anyways. So am I really going to ding the tenant for part of the carpets? So if there was, just a minimal usage on it, but you plan to do the floors anyways, it's not really fair, in my opinion, to charge the tenant for something that goes towards your flooring allocation since you're choosing to upgrade. So that would be a simple example of something where you can see normal wear and tear. It could be carpets. Paint, Usually you're going to repaint, but you don't want to repaint the whole unit just because the resident left a couple walls with holes. So we basically in the lease will state that the tenant's supposed to turn the condition of the unit back to how it was when they got it. So if they did a couple nail holes or something or hung a couple picture frames, they're expected to patch and paint and that sort of thing, right? Not likely that the tenant's going to pick the right type of paint, but nonetheless, if we can, we're just going to re-roll certain walls. Let's say a unit was freshly painted, tenant stayed there for a year or two. So not likely there's tons of wear and tear over that period. So if we can, we're going to repaint just a few walls. It wouldn't be the right thing to just repaint the entire unit and claim the entire paint. The entire unit need to be repainted. And, at $1.50 square foot or something, 1,000 square foot unit could be pretty expensive for a tenant's deposit, right? So a scenario like that is, we don't think it's the right decision that you're repainting the whole unit when you could have just done a few walls and now you're charging the tenant for a full repaint. Same could be for flooring, right? You, there was only carpet in the bedrooms, but everything else was tile. But you wanted to upgrade the flooring in the entire place. Kind of using that gray area of like, oh yeah, like there was carpet they damaged, but it's really just going towards your flooring budget, right? So we try not to claim anything on the deposit that's really can't justify that's like a legitimate thing. So carpets, because one way could be normal wear and tear. Paint, not as much, but I would more so point to like don't overcharge them for repainting the whole place. If they really only had a few walls that they were responsible for, you could do a percentage of the paint budget or something like that. Um, Appliances, so knobs over time can sort of just be wonky, stuff like that. So it's something to consider too with just the appliances in general use. And that's why landlords have a maintenance budget. Like stuff's just going to get broken over time, even if it was you as the homeowner that were there that just used it in a normal way. So appliances could be different buttons and things like that. Obviously, if it's not working at all, you know, could be tenant negligence, I guess possibly, but most of what we see appliance replacements are just, it's gone out over time where it's not functioning or there's a control panel issue. Like tenants usually don't do a lot of damage to the appliances unless it's something that could be more obvious, like a stovetop that's glass that gets cracked or something like that. So floors, so like hardwood floors, if there's deep gouges or if it's hardwood floored or like a cheaper laminate and they had a heavy dog, there could be some circumstances, especially if there's stairs. There could be some extra things to take a deeper look at to see like maybe there was some resident damage on the floors itself. Again, if you're upgrading flooring, it's great to put in something that's going to be heavy resistant to any sort of heavy foot traffic or dogs. So that way you don't even have to like go through this process when they move out. But flooring could be something where you may still have normal sort of wear and tear on it, even if it's a hard surface. It may just need to be cleaned in it and something comes out just as far as scuff marks or, somebody moves the table and there's like a black little skid mark that's you basically could be deep cleaned to probably get it out. Like it's not going to be reasonable that you would charge them for an entire, new floor. Um, Odors and smells, none of that's going to be, would be obviously normal wear and tear. That's going to be pretty easy. Pet smells, stuff like that to sort of claim on that, air filters, stuff like that. Landscaping, obviously, if they're responsible for it and you take over, should be somewhat freshly maintained. So if the lawn's already long, then it's probably pretty likely that they didn't maintain it that month prior. So that could be something. And then additionally, obviously, bushes and stuff like that could be stuff that if you're having to trim it back to a condition of what it was when they moved in, that could be reasonable as well. Yeah, obviously, photos and stuff is going to help you if the resident complains or disputes the deposit. You just have to have a way to justify your position, and photos and stuff like that helps as well. Blinds and fixtures, a lot of times they're going to be cracked or broken. Of course, that's going to be something that's an obvious, claim against deposit. But if they're just not functioning, it's going to be a sort of a judgment call. If it's a really old blind and the pull string just isn't working anymore, it probably just needed new blinds anyways. So, unless there's an obvious way that you're sort of able to claim that it was, tenant damage, it could be, just be fair in that circumstance that, yeah, those blinds were there for like 7 years, 5 years, 10 years, they're probably not going to last that long anyways. So, just educating yourself as an investor of what's common useful life for stuff is going to be helpful when you guys are going through this stuff. Obviously pests or bugs, any of that stuff, residents usually going to be responsible for unless it's multifamily, might be included. So it really comes down to, using your documentation that you have. If you don't have anything, It is going to be a judgment call, but if you're self-managing, you want to just do proper due diligence on, okay, is this really enough? And if you're not sure, tenant damage or was it there, then I would say just don't charge for it. That's the easiest way to stay out of lawsuits and disputes with residents, and how we've had a good track record is we definitely properly protect the owners, but we don't go above and beyond to charge the deposit for unnecessary stuff that we think is a little bit unfair. And so that's the best thing. And then you check out the Florida statute on the tenant landlord relationship. It'll let you know what you need to do as far as if you are making a claim, how quickly do you have to return the deposit and send them notice. If you're not making a claim, how there's just a separate timeline for that. So that's stuff that we do on a constant basis. But it's obviously relying on experience, but our thorough move out report that's going to give you a good idea what you need to do to get the thing turned over, and identifying what's tenant damage, what's owner responsibility, but what's also the owner improvements to get it really uh, looking well for leasing. So there could be different couple buckets of where the expenses are going, but again, wanting to make sure that we're being fair with residents on what we're claiming for deposits and not going above and beyond. So that's where the owners trust our judgment. When we're doing this sort of stuff, so that we don't overcharge. Because if we get sued, the owner's going to get sued, or vice versa. So it's in our best interest in the owners to just look at that as a place to get the unit back to condition, but not go crazy with what we're trying to charge the resident for, just because we possibly could. Thanks for watching.